Hello, everybody. Back after those 8 hours of reviews. Man, yeah, I was supposed to actually do more work this weekend, but I got so slammed with that and other stuff going on. I kind of like chilled a little bit, and instead of like going like full on detail on my model, I kind of decided to just stay around like primary and secondary forms again, and just make sure that she's looking better. So let me just share this one. So this is what I have so far. So I was doing this render. Let me just move this away. Did a couple of renders here. So like this was like the first one that I had. She looked like kinder. I liked her face in there and everything. But I kind of like, I tried to go a little bit more towards that reference, and then I end up like kind of like changing her face quite a bit. And then she is basically like, she looks like this. I'm missing still some tiny details in here, like some secondary stuff that actually is going to split this. It looks too puffy right now. But, and then I still have to go over, so I can detail the whole thing. And I started to add some of those guys just as guides, but I have to build up in betweens and just to add some direction in there. But yeah, she looks like this so far. She looks like a little Yoda, right? It's like a pale Yoda. But yeah, gonna keep going on that and probably gonna try to detail some more tonight. I actually added some of those wrinkles in the forehead. Started to actually bring things together, but still a long way to go. But like the class today is an important one for me because I like seeing the model with some color, right? And then the thing that I tried to do with her was this. I kind of like, I just brought like an approximation of the color. Obviously, it's very different when you look at the whole thing as in the context, right? Because I mean, like she has lots of different tones. But I tried to get like some kind of like average that I can use, something like I can actually go more towards like tan in certain areas and then a little bit lighter in certain other areas. So I think I'm gonna start playing with this, and then it would be cool to have like some, even if it's a simple map, a beginning, I can actually look at and start like playing with those values in there. So one thing you can look, a little disclaimer here is that when I paint those maps live with you guys, it's very hard for you to see them because of the compression, it's like, doesn't matter what settings I use. Normally, like when the video is compressed, you kind of like, it blends everything together. So, but there's one thing, for example, like you can just like albedo color, if you just type albedo color, for example, you're probably gonna see, let's see, skin. Probably going to get results like this. Another option is to actually go to a website that has like scans, right? Like those scan websites, they sell the textures as well. So normally they're going to have like a matching perfectly texture that you can actually look at. And it's also nice, it's always a nice little reference, it's like to look at stuff like, oh, look at this model. I don't even know who the person is here. But let's see, let's just get this one back and just let's open here like that. So basically like that's kind of like what you're going for, it's like we're gonna try to paint something that actually has less of this because it seems like there's a little bit of the shadows baked in there, not only like plain color. But overall, we're gonna try to achieve something similar to this, What I can do here, let me just get back to my Yoda lady. And then I'm just gonna go and maybe open another scene. So let's see. Let's just make sure I have this one saved. And let's open one that I have some color painted in there, so you can actually check out. And then we're gonna do something similar. Okay, this one. All right. Let's see one that would be good. Maybe like the. Let's see. Yeah, let's try to open the stand Winston one. Should I stand? Oops, this one. So we can take a look. It's like the one I did like last January, it's hard to see because like it's a very dark skin, and then we're gonna have to tweak those slides to be able to see anything. But at least with Stan, it's a little bit more in your face. And then the approach is going to be the same. You know, it's like if you watch the class in January, what I did I started with a color very similar to this one, like a white skin, and then with the slides, I actually just dragged like everything way down, and then that actually gave me like a nice ballpark for the dark skin, and then I could just like start doing that, working on that. I'm gonna show you some tricks here. Look at that guy without any teeth. Looks so weird. I get the guy some teeth here so it doesn't look too weird. Oh, that's later. There you go. So let's just take a look at this guy without material. Sorry, this one. So this is not the HD geometry here, right? So let's just do, let's turn off this thing. So if you go HD, probably gonna see something more like this. Let's see. You know, it's like it has some like micro veins in there, and it has a little bit more redness in here. The tones around like lips, for example, I try to keep them kind of desaturated. And in his case, I don't know if he was a smoker, but the reference is definitely much more, much grayer in here. The tone of around the eyes is normally a little bit darker. You know, it's like it's funny because sometimes you add like a tone that's just a little bit darker than the rest, and somehow it doesn't look quite normal to me. Like for the most part, I try to go like a little bit darker than usual, unless it's someone with a very, very fair skin, then probably going to be a little bit similar. But the darker tone really kind of counters a little bit the subsurface in there, you know. And another thing that I normally do is to paint like a very, very pale tone underneath the eyebrows, if it's like someone with a fair skin, you know. And the other thing is like use those yellow tones for areas of like cartilage, like that, like whitish yellow around here in the nose as well. You know, sometimes like some landmarks like the bone structure. And then you have like some tones like a little bit more on the yellow green kind of side of things, you know. And then for the most part, all this stuff here, it's a combination of using I mean, like, I'm not talking about the specific stuff, which is the veins in here, but the texture of the skin itself. If I show like that, let's hope that it shows for you guys. It's mostly like a spray brush that I use, and I start with a very broad brush, and then I start getting smaller and smaller with it. So basically, like it's always going to be the same thing, you know. It's like to paint all those textures, it's going to be starting with a very low intensity for the color, and then a very, very low intensity and also very large brush, like for the spray. And then slowly you're going to increase that intensity and then reduce the size of it. And that adds like a lot of depth to it. So you start with like very broad, very subtle stuff, and then all the way down to like something more specific and more detailed, you know. So that's kind of like the way we're gonna approach. In her case, I mean, like her skin tone is different from his skin tone, so we're gonna probably like not be using anything like this, but I'm gonna do this. Check this out. Okay. Sure, this one. All right. So while it's opening there, let's go back to Maya. And then let's see, Maya here. So in Maya, we have this one, right? The thing that I tried to do in here, I actually added this lighting setup. And this lighting setup you can actually find for download in our page, right? Like together with at the very beginning of the lessons, you know, you have like access to a couple of you know, free stuff in there that I put. Like there's a lighting setup, which is the studio lighting, and it's basically like this. I'm gonna show you here. I changed it a little bit, but it's basically the same thing, you know. So I imported this one, which is the lighting setup you have in there, which is just like 3 lights. One is from the back and 2 from the sides. But the setup when you download it, those lights are probably lower around here, so like right at the eye level. I actually brought them up slightly so I get a little bit of the shadow underneath the eyebrows, right? And the other thing I did, I changed two things for the lights here that you can do on your side as well. The first one is to actually change the color temperature. So I just click use the color temperature and I put 6500. This one as well and this one as well. So they all calibrate to 6500, which is like daylight, right? So it's not like too warm or too cold. So I kept it like that, and then I played with intensities until I got something that I liked, you know. So this one I actually put like at 3 for intensity, and this one at around 14. So, you know, it's not like a 2-to-1. It's like, this is like way more because I wanted to get more of this dramatic lighting, kind of like have a little bit more shadow in there, right? But if you want something that's more like even, then you can definitely go for something that looks more like the reference you're looking at, like something like, let's see where I had it, like those references here, right? It's got like a very even lighting setup from both sides. And you can see he's using umbrellas in here, right? Like just by looking at the reflection in the eyes right there. So he's using 2 umbrella lights, like to get this very diffuse, nice little soft shadow everywhere, right? And you still get some nice detail. So, you know, see the shadow is very, very, you know, subtle underneath everything. It's very flattering, right? So it's basically a similar setup, but it's just using like, instead of like the umbrellas, although I think this one has umbrellas applied as a texture, but I might be wrong, I don't know. I have to check. And then, yeah, so basically like change the position and then change the intensity basically for them. And then you should get something that looks similar, you know, but totally optional. The reason why I did this way instead of using an HDRI is just because I want something that's a little bit more controlled, just like a daylight calibrated. And then with that, I can actually use this color from her skin to actually, you know, it's like play with that in ZBrush. So I changed the relation to the last one that we did. So let's see how I have this right now. Just before the class started, actually, I changed the color a little bit, you know, and always adjusting things. So the color I have right now, at least like in my case here works, is this one here. So let's just switch to RGB. 184, 141. So 184, 141. So 184, 141. And then the last one is what? The last one is 106. Okay. Let's see how it looks like in ZBrush, because obviously it's going to be a different color. 140. Was that 146 or 106? I don't remember. Oh no, that's not 146. 106, yeah. I thought that was it. 106. Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of like not exactly what I see in there, but like, you know, it's a good base, I think. I can definitely start with this one. And then I'm going to basically bake this one by going to my color and then making sure that RGB is at 100. And why RGB has to be at 100? Because of this. It's actually, it accumulates, right? So if you have like 5, for example, and you do that, it just adds little by little. So I have to click multiple times. See, I'm clicking multiple times in order to paint the whole thing. So if you keep this one at 100, just doing in one scoop, it just paints the whole thing. So that's the color we want. And then obviously for your models, you're gonna have to see what's like the average you're gonna get. You know, in some of the previous classes, I actually gave like a default amount, but I mean, all those characters are so different these days that I just rather, you know, start with something I can see in Maya. And then I might actually have to tweak this because I'm not sure, you know, it's like if you're using like a color profile like I have in here, you can tell that this one here is using a color management for the color mixing in here, right? So if I turn it off, it changes completely, goes like super brown like that, right? So I have to see if like this correspondence between this and what I'm gonna bring in terms of a map is gonna match, or maybe what's gonna happen if I paint a map based on this color here, maybe, I don't know, maybe what I'm gonna have to do is if I add a texture there, for example, I'm gonna have to go here and I'm probably gonna have to find this linear Rec 709, that's basically the one that's being used to color correct. So I might have to do that. I'm gonna try it with linear sRGB like you normally use, but probably like if it's calibrated that way, I'm probably gonna have to match that when I bring it back from ZBrush, but we're gonna check. So let's go back here. And then let's start by going HD. So like right now I have everything, you know, it's like just plain, right? Like there's no other colors, just like very plain. Still have to work this whole body. I'm just like adding some stuff in there, just like blocking things. But let's just like isolate this and start with that poly group that we always work on. So just gonna go HD on it. And everything you work on the HD side of things, it's gonna be, it's basically like it's gonna be baked as poly paint at this point, right? So as long as your topology doesn't change from this point on, you're totally safe. But if you're planning to change your topology, I would say stay away from like any fine detail or poly paint at this point. Make sure your topology looks good at first. This is the most important part. And then from this point on, even if you don't have like a nice set of UVs already, it's totally fine because you're going to be painting everything in poly paint. So all this stuff is going to be baked into the model. And then as soon as you have like your UDIMs correctly, right? Like either, I don't know, like 3 maps, 5 maps, you know, based on those calculations we did at the beginning, then you can just bring that model and just re-import into the base mesh. Basically, like go to the lowest resolution outside of HD, re-import your model with UVs into that. Or you can do, for example, like just import as another subtool, for example. And then you can just go to plugin, and you can do UV master. And you can just copy the UVs, click at the one you just brought in as a separate subtool, and then go to the lowest resolution of this guy here, and then just paste UVs. You can do that as well, you know, if you don't want to import back into the, yeah, there's like multiple ways to do it. But yeah, let's take a look at the brushes that I normally use here. So there's one brush here that I put together. That's basically what I'm using for a lot of this stuff, like this skin color here. So I have like color spray and color spray 2. And you see like this is the color spray 2. Let's see, we're gonna open the preferences. They're basically the same thing. I think just the variation is in here. So this one uses the default stuff. So placement is only like 1, the flow is 0.25. I normally bring this down because I want them to be more spread out. But the way I'm gonna start this is by adding like some plain colors at first. And the thing that's gonna happen here is that I'm gonna be adding this like very, very subtle colors. So I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see them. I use an intensity of like 2 to 5, something like that, but not much further than that. And to start blocking things, you can actually start with a regular standard brush with no alpha, just to block certain areas, like the major areas, you know. And then you can start detailing things like right within those areas. So for the skin, I'm going to start with some of those tones. Let's see. I've seen like all kinds of different approaches for painting skin. Some people prefer to add like very, very saturated colors. I've seen like people painting like the green's really green, the blue's really blue, you know, and kind of approaching like almost like they're painting with airbrush back in the day with like a practical model, right? Instead of like approaching kind of like more like a CG kind of thing. The thing about the practical model is that back in the day, they had to simulate a lot of stuff. Those practical models in the past, they had, my model is still pretty symmetrical, by the way. I still have to break a lot of symmetry. The detail is broken, but the main forms are not that broken. So back in the day, they would paint those things, you know, it's like very saturated and everything, because they had to try to simulate the translucency and everything by painting things on latex, right? It was not even like silicone. Silicone was not even that used in it at that point, you know. It's like we have many props at ILM and they are like latex. A lot of them are falling apart actually, which is a shame because they just like it rottens over time, right? The latex is very sensitive. Just the air itself, the contact with the air just like makes it rotten. And then, so they used to paint like all those very saturated colors and everything, and then start blending with layer after layer to try to create this translucency effect. And then on top of that, I mean, like the way that they filmed everything, for example, like if it's a movie that has like a lot of the character has to be seen like in dark a lot, for example, like a horror movie or something like that, they're gonna have to oversaturate certain things, you know. So you go and look, for example, some props that we have at ILM, and they look very saturated and fake looking, you know. But then you look at the movies they are used before, like Ghostbusters, you know, it's like they're props of all kinds of stuff, like ET, and then it looks fine in the movie, you know. It's just like they had to overcompensate. So I don't use that approach, you know. I understand the appeal of it, but I just don't use it. I just go straight to, you know, to the general colors, almost like the same way I'm approaching like the model itself, starting with the major forms and then breaking them down slowly, right? Like it starts with the major and then break down, break down, break down. Then I'm going to do the same with the colors. I'm going to start with the major forms, with the major colors, and then I'm going to start breaking down into more detail areas. At this point here, I'm not even going to bother switching, because at some point I'm going to switch to flat coloring here. Why is my flat color? I think my flat color is not working because this is baked into the model. So if that happens, for example, if you one day you click in your flat color and nothing changes, it's because you probably at some point you baked the material into the model. So like the mRGB instead of just RGB. So what you can do to correct that, you just click material, this one here, and then you can actually go. Let's maybe do this from outside of HD, so to make sure that I have the whole model covered with that. So let's go outside of here, and then you can just click adjust M, and then with flat color on, just go to fill object, and now that basically like resets it. So flat color is supposed to be the default color. So if you switch to anything else now, all the materials work fine. You know, otherwise it's going to be baked in there. It's never going to be. You're never going to be able to change it. So let's switch back to our startup material. I'm going to do it again, like just go to the side, go HD. So that problem sometimes happens. So now if I change, it should work. So now it's flat color is working, right? But it's pointless at this point, but because we don't have any reference, there's no landmarks, we didn't paint anything yet. So everything looks very, very weird, right? Like you cannot see anything. So I'm going to start with something like, sometimes I even start with skin shade, right? So at least like it's a very, very pale version of it. If you want to make sure that you see things even more, you can just go to the modifiers, material. You can go to your modifiers right here and maybe like increase your diffuse and even the ambient a little bit. So you can actually crank it and maybe reduce this back a little bit. So now it's easier to see what's going on in there, you know. So I'm going to start with some of those major colors that I said. I mean, like you guys feel free to use like import this the texture or the picture into ZBrush. You can use I don't use that feature that much actually, but you can use where is it? It's the Lightbox, right? Is it Lightbox? No, Lightbox. No. Spotlight. Yeah, Spotlight. So some people use that, you know, it's like they can bring like a picture to the side and then they can use the picker to pick the colors precisely. But I just try to do everything, you know, it's like by hand because I'm stupid and I want to train my eye and, you know, it's like learn with this. So I'm going to start by just blocking some of the darker tones. And normally, like as you start bringing the darker tones, not a lot of stuff is going to pop, you know, it's like everything's going to start popping when you start adding the lighter tones, but I normally do that last. So I'm just going to go like more towards the orange. So I start like as a baseline, this color here, so I can just pick it, right? And then I can just like saturate some more and then bring more towards the orange here just slightly. And then again, like it's going to be a very low intensity, just the RGB on. It's going to be like a 2. And I'm going to start adding some of this color here. So I'm going to start like in areas like the cheeks in here. I'm going to turn off actually my stroke lazy mouse. So it's just like playing right now. If I do like full intensity, that's basically what I'm doing right here. So you can see it, right? Full intensity, that's basically it. I'm adding some tan in there. But I'm going to do like very, very low intensity. I'm going to just start adding some of that coloring in there. So like underneath in here. the sides a little bit. I'm gonna keep it a little bit more pale around the eyes. All the way around here, I'm gonna try to block. And then obviously, because I'm HD here, I cannot see the rest of the head. One option here, before you go further, let's just get out of here, is to actually do the head as a whole without the ears, because the ears normally are going to consume a lot of polygons. So I'm just going to remove, maybe I can do this. I can just select the face, reverse it, and then let's get rid of, let's see, this area here first. And this here, maybe a little lasso here helps. Let's do it like that. And now let's reverse it and let's just get rid of this area here. Let's see how much of that I can get in a single scoop. I might have to actually get rid of the ears to be able to get everything in a single subtool. Just get rid of this, this little eardrums here. So I'm gonna try. If it doesn't work, then we do something else. But let's create another grouping here so it's easy for me to select. So just gonna go and do like an auto groups. And now I should have a full group for this whole chunk. And then let's try that. Now this model doesn't have like the pockets for mouth or eyes or anything. It's completely hollow. But the ears in my specific model, they have a ton of geometry. They are not very well planned. So I might, you know, miss a chunk here and there. So let's see. As long as I get most of the face, I'm actually happy. Yeah, that's not ideal. Let's go back. I'm gonna hide this ears, at least like a good part of it, because I want to make sure I can actually see the stuff, you know, for the most part. Oops, let's just do this again, like this one, and then let's get the lasso. I'm pressing Shift Control actually to select the lasso, so next time I click on it, it actually works fine. Let's do this. Actually, let's get that little guy right there as well. Because I want to make sure that I'm seeing most of the stuff, you know, since I'm going to be painting the color, I want to make sure that they are actually talking to each other. Obviously, you can always pick stuff, you know, at any time I can just like click, drag, and click the other part and then keep going with it. But I'm going to try to do as much as possible in a single scoop. Yeah, we got most of the face now, so that's good. That's a good chunk in there. So let's try this. Let's keep going with our color. I'm gonna go around the chin. If you observe on her chin, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see in there, but she has a little bit of like gray in here. She definitely had either some tattooing here that really faded away over time, or some like a face paint, you know, but I can definitely see like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 stripes. And I noticed some of the people in her community, and you know, it's like they had some stuff like that in their faces. So that might be a cool thing to actually introduce as well. But for now, let's just focus on the rest here. Just gonna be adding some more of that. It's almost like adding some makeup, right? Like you get those makeups kits that my mom had. You're gonna get like this type of color, you know. It's like, oh, I need to look a little bit more tan, like our president, you know, very tan, very orange president. And then, so we're gonna go there, and then let's get some more around, starting around here. Like I said, like I'm gonna leave like around the eyes a little bit paler right now. And definitely the forehead, you're gonna have a lot of tan, right? Because I mean, that's the most exposed part of your, if you're heading here, the sun is gonna hit you straight on right there, and the top of your ears, obviously. But so this area here can go a little bit darker. I'm gonna paint a little bit closer to the ears in here. So basically what I did, I just like made the color that was like the original color a little bit darker, more saturated, and more towards the red. But it's basically like pretty much in the ballpark. And because I'm using like such a low intensity, things gonna start blending almost like if I was airbrushing things, right? Just like airbrushing right now. And there's no specific brush right now. It's just like a general, you know, it's like a standard brush right now. It's just like to get some of the overall tones in place. Then I'm gonna go a little bit on the sides of the nose as well. A little bit to the top, around here, all the way around. The important thing is that you don't use like overly saturated colors, you know. It's like I've seen like some of the poly paint, sometimes people go a little bit too video gamey, and then they don't look very realistic at the end, you know. The base would be always to refer to something like this, you know. It's always like something like, first you don't bake the specular. That's why they kind of remove the specking here, but also they introduce a lot of shadow that wasn't supposed to be in there. And when you have that kind of stuff, you know, it's like you end up like this deceiving, you know, because of the forms are not in there, and you can make the form look like they're in there, right? By baking, for example, darker tones around the nose to make it look thinner. You see all those tutorials people have like going viral right now, right? Like women who can transform themselves into anyone, basically, like just using makeup. You know, it's like it's pretty amazing what they do, and it's just by changing the impression, right, like of the form, by painting like those darker areas where you want things to look a little bit deeper and lighter if you want to look more like in relief. So it's all a trick. So the intention here is to do the opposite. We're going to be very, very careful with it. We're not going to overcook anything because we don't want to actually distract from the form itself. We want to help the form to be revealed instead of like just like cheating to create a form that's not in there, you know. If that's the case, then we're going to go back to the model. We're going to remodel that area to make sure that things are looking good. Otherwise, it's going to look good from one angle, and then you're going to switch around, and then when you render, it doesn't look good at all. I've seen many of those posts on Zebra Central in the past, you know, like that, and looks perfect from one angle, and then start spinning around during the making of, and I was like, holy Jesus, like that's not a good model. So yeah, a lot of forms are actually baked in there, so we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we are doing things correctly. All right, so now I have a little bit of that tan. It's not like strong or anything, it's just a little bit, right? And we're gonna be building, like if I need to go another layer like this, I'm gonna be doing one by one like this, like very, very slowly building the stones, right? But at least it's something that's not completely pale anymore. So let's go a little bit higher here. She's gonna have the hair later, but for now, we're just going to be putting some more color in here. Right, so I left, like the areas I left alone are basically like the nose for now, the lips and around the eyes, right? Everything else, I got a little bit of color, different intensities, a little bit more intense, like on the sides of the face, right? Like chin, like a little bit more intense. And then the forehead definitely more intense because of the tan in there. So got that, a little bit of brown here. And then now we can start playing with some other tones. We can choose to do like, start with some reds. We have like some magentas we can use in purples that are normally used, like magentas and purples around eyes and lips, but very desaturated, you know. So I can start with that, for example. Let's try, pick a tone like this. Kind of like it's almost in between like a magenta and a purple in here, and it looks very strong. But if you use the intensity like very, very low, like 1, you can start adding a little bit as a first layer, and then we're gonna cover with more like a little bit more red after. But try not to go for something that's pink, you know, it's like the bright pink, because that looks very, very fake. So I'm gonna do like a pass with this. It's gonna be very, very subtle, right around the eyes right here. So I stopped already. I added just enough. Try not to make, you know, it's like the things pop too much. You don't need to see the color too much. It has to be just an impression that it is in there. So just gonna go here. The lips are gonna do the same thing. And you're gonna notice that I'm not gonna paint all the way until it looks like this, right? That would look silly. Gonna keep at 1 for intensity. Just gonna put a little bit of that color, because I have to build up those colors as I go here. Let's see, it has a lot more reds in there, right? Like some magentas as well, much less purple stuff. So I added a little bit in here. So underneath the eyes, maybe like the right around the eye bags or the eyelids, I'm gonna add a little bit more intensity to it, just a little bit. And I'm gonna move on to some more red. So something more red like that. But you see like my reds and even the purple, I'm not like all the way here, right? Because it would be super saturated. I'm always kind of like beyond the middle here towards gray. So basically like it's very desaturated colors, right? Because that actually helps to blend things together nicely instead of like something that just goes like super bright all of a sudden. So I'm gonna add some around here. For cheeks, right? And then around here, side, and then definitely on the sides of the nose right here. Very little. And then slowly you're gonna build this, but like I'm still like blocking those colors just like without any brush. But soon we're gonna switch to some brushes to help out. Just gonna build this. Just a tiny little bit of color as just as a base for everything. Oops. And everything that's going to happen in terms of like how the detail is going to pop and everything, it's using spray. You know, the spray really brings everything to life. And it's a variation using the spray like with tons of variation, you know, so it doesn't look like monotonous or something that would look fake. So I'm going to add a little bit of red around here as well in the forehead, slightly. You're probably going to be able to see a lot of stuff right now, actually. But as soon as I record it, probably a lot of stuff is going to look very, very, you know, kind of like the compression is going to destroy it. So what I normally do at the end of the class, I post like a screenshot of this together with the lessons you can see in there. And then you can actually see the model. I can try to do like a close up or something so you can see like the details that we added. Otherwise, like, yeah, as soon as I record, the recording is done, you're definitely not going to be able to see everything. Like you kind of can right now. So let's see, like around the eyes in here, a little bit more redness. And then when I get really inside here, this is a tricky one because sometimes you think it has to be super red in there, but that's a very pale area. So I normally paint like pale. You can see like in her case, it looks a little bit more red in there, but sometimes the subsurface already does that job for you. So we're gonna have to be careful with it. Try not to go too crazy with what you see in the image, because you have to take into account that there's a lot of subsurface scattering, right? And if you get like a picture like this, for example, check this thing out. This is one of the other picture of her, right? It looks very different, but you can tell it's the same person because I was comparing all the landmarks. Yeah, it's spot on, it's the same, right? There's no doubt it's the same person. But check this out. You still can see a little bit of the gray stuff in her chin right there, like 1, 2, 3, 4 stripes. And yeah, basically like the same details everywhere. Like that one is a very specific one right here, right? Sure. That's definitely the same lady. But look at the amount of subsurface scattering right here with the sunlight hitting straight on. And look at the colors that you get. The deepest you're getting like the red in there, you're getting some yellows in here, right? So all the fat tissue mixed with the blood vessels and everything. So that's kind of stuff you have to take into account. You know, it's like sometimes how you can paint this in your model, right? You're gonna paint red, it's gonna go like completely crazy when you render it. So you have to take into account that, you know, a lot of the redness you're seeing here is all part of the subsurface scattering. So the fact is, when you paint when you render something, you're actually another thing like I forgot to mention is this. For example, like this guy here. It's a cool reference for painting, for example, based on what you're seeing here, but that includes the subsurface scattering. There is no way to remove the subsurface scattering from what you're seeing here, right? I mean, like he's attempting to do that a little bit in the ears and everything, but a lot of the redness of the skin itself, you know, it's like a lot of stuff that's in here, this is all subsurface scattering, you know. The color of the skin itself, if you could extract the subsurface scattering from it, you would be much more pale than this. It's almost like draining somebody out of their, you know, the blood vessels and the fat deposits underneath the skin and all that stuff. So the skin of someone who is dead, right, is a very pale kind of skin. So in the past, like classes, what I was doing, I was actually matching the color 1-to-1 or as close as possible to the reference, because that's all we can do, right? And then there is a node we can add in Maya to actually drag down, you know, it's like the intensity or the saturation of everything, so we can actually compensate for the fact that we're using subsurface scattering. So at the end, you get a similar result to this, but if you look at the skin color, it's going to get like paler than what it is in here, right? In here, and then you're adding more subsurface scattering and basically doubling that. So everything gets very super orange or red, you know. So we're going to have to be careful with that. But obviously, to match something, you have to have a point of reference. And my only point of reference is what I can see. I cannot automatically remove the subsurface scattering. So we're going to be doing this. And then later we can actually add a little node in there just to remove some of the saturation, you know, and try to find a sweet spot where things look good. So that's just like parenthesis for the process that we're going to be going through. So I'm going to be bringing back this more towards the orange now. So you see, like I came like from almost purple and I went back to magenta, and then now more towards the red and orange, right? And then what we can do at this point, let's switch to that brush that I mentioned before, which is, let's just get here. I thought I got it here. Let's see, skin color spray, right? So skin color spray. So this brush here is basically like, it's the standard brush. I created a copy of it. You can do that too. Start with standard, just click clone, right? And also you can, you know, you can actually search online how to create an icon, but basically like you can create a little specific icon like that. That's just like to show a preview, right? But it's just up to you guys. I mean, you don't need that. It can be anything. So it's the standard brush plus the stroke switch to spray, right? And then the thing about spray is that if you have color on in here, it tends to mix whatever colors you have in here. So if you have like two different colors, it's gonna mix them. And I don't want that. I want the pure color. So I'm gonna bring color down to 0. I'm gonna keep my flow at 25 and see what I get first. If it's too much flow, maybe I can just like reduce everything so it's a little bit more spread out. Same for the placement. So let's see with those values here. Default 0.5, 1, 0, and 0.25. I have an alpha here. It can be anything. I think that at this point I have like, you know, like, I don't know. I got like 41 now. Let's try with 41. Let's see what I get. And then I'm gonna switch the intensity all the way to 100 so I can see what I'm doing and see what kind of result you get. So at this point, you see like it's a lot of intensity, right? Like a lot of flow. So you see like it's very, I unintentionally painted some vitiligo here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go to spray. You're gonna go to flow 0. And now we get more space between them, right? So that looks more natural to paint something like that. So we're gonna be using this spray, and you can tell, I mean, like I'm gonna start with a large spray. So it's gonna get something like this, right? With a very low intensity. So the intention, I'm gonna paint like, just to show you. So I'm gonna start with a low intensity, for example, like, let's try like 5. If I do something like this, and I go later to 12, a little smaller, like this, then I'm gonna go to higher, 18, and then smaller. And then I'm gonna go even higher, and then even smaller. So when you paint something like this, you start adding like layers of depth, you know? So the intention is to actually do that kind of stuff. We're gonna approach this way, blocking the forms like with the large spray, with a very low intensity first. And then slowly you're gonna bring it down in size, and then bring up in the intensity. So I'm gonna just undo this stuff I just did. There you go. So let's start with a low intensity, maybe 5. I'm gonna do the same thing. So I'm gonna start painting. Oh, by the way, now if I switch back to flat color, you can actually see a little bit of the color now that I have, right? So it's like, it starts to get easier to see where things are. I'm still not like completely set, so I'm gonna go back here with my tweaked skin shader so I can actually see some of the forms. And I'm gonna go and start like adding some of this variation, maybe a little bit more intense than that, so I can actually see more. So 8. And I'm gonna add some of this spray around here. I'm gonna go around the eyes a little bit, definitely around the forehead. And start going towards the side right here. Older people, they're gonna get like those liver spots, right? So eventually we're gonna get a lot of like very specific detail. That this is like the same way we did the porous. That's basically like just like a first pass for everything, just to set up the tone, right? The pores themselves don't hold the whole structure of the skin. You're gonna have to detail things manually, get like specific details and bumps and bruises and whatever it is. Same with the skin, you know, it's like it's not gonna hold up completely if you don't add like all those little liver spots, or you know, it's like little marks in the skin, you know, all kinds of stuff you can do. All this stuff is what adds character to your character. So so you're gonna have to do that, you know. It's like don't expect like just this brush here to do the whole job and look everything completely realistic at the end. You're gonna have to be very specific with a certain detail. Same for the pores. Don't expect the pores to look make the character look realistic, because it's not gonna do it. You need to go specific. So I'm gonna do that. So that add a little bit of more interesting detail, right? I'm gonna do a little bit around here too. Still very early to say, you know, because we don't have a lot of the colors are being built like layer by layer, so it's still very, very faint. But slowly you're going to be building things up. So now we're going to go to the next level, right? So I'm going to keep the same color I have, maybe a little bit more towards orange slightly, right there. But you see, like, it's behind the middle line here, still very desaturated. If I need to go more saturated later, I can do that. But I remember that the saturation, a lot of it's going to come from the color of your scatter as well. If you have something that's very orange for your scatter, a lot of the orange is going to come from it, you know, same for the red or whatever it is. So let's see. Let's go back here. Intensity is going to be higher now. I start with 8. Let's go double that. So it's 16, even maybe higher. So I'm going to go a little bit smaller. And all the movement I'm doing here, it's in circles, right? I'm not painting like anything linearly. I'm just going like in circles like this. If you can see my mouse, like everywhere, always in circles, right? Because I want to make sure I get stuff. I'm just doing very fast. And that's another thing that I mentioned sometime like a few weeks back. The gesture is important, you know, because if you do a movement super slowly like that, you're going to get more, you know, it's like more density in the brush. So it's going to get darker and darker very fast. But if you do it like in very, very fast movements, you're going to get like a very, almost like an airbrush kind of control, you know. If you do like if you hold it too steady, pressing the button like constantly, you're going to get a lot of paint right there. But if you do very fast, kind of like, you know, then you're going to get just a tiny little bit. And that's going to help a lot to get like just a very, very subtle detail. So I'm going to get in here. And at this point, I'm painting everything symmetrically, right? Just saving a ton of time. Thank God for symmetry. Obviously, I could go like completely asymmetrical in here. It wouldn't matter that much. It's just I would have to work double at this point. And we don't have all that time to spare. By the way, guys, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm feeling so, you know, it's like not focused during this class because of the whole thing that's happening around the world right now. You know, it's just like hard to keep the focus, man. That's why I don't think I'm progressing as fast as I should. Just like trying to stay calm, you know, and everything. I'm not freaking out or anything. It's just that, you know, it's just like I'm concerned about what's going to happen after this whole thing is set. You know, I'm not even talking about deaths or anything. It's just the economy, you know, it's like and the government pulling a lot of shit on you, just taking advantage of the situation. But yeah, so I'm concerned.
I'm with you, Chris. I've been talking to my wife, who is a nurse as well.
Yeah.
the labor and delivery nurse, so she hasn't been affected as much.
Yeah.
I just had to go talk to her, and they're like instilling all these weird regulations about like the different, like they have to be in like hazmat suits to do a couple of different
Oh, really?
procedures, like C-sections and epidurals now.
What?
But yesterday they were telling him to like reuse their masks.
Oh, my wife was pissed at that, man.
I know, she was super pissed about that too. And now, literally a day later, they're like, "Oh, don't not." They didn't even say to not reuse your mask. They're just like, if you do these certain things, you need to be completely like hazmated up. Like, it just seems weird. It seems
yeah,
like,
I mean, like she said, like our whole life, like you know, it's like as nurses and everything, it's all about like keeping everything clean and you know, it's like sterilized and everything. And all of a sudden they come with something like that. That's very bizarre. Yeah, she was really pissed.
Freaks me out. And my youngest daughter has a little bit of like respiratory issues. Just freaks me out, man.
Yeah, dude. So yeah, it's hard to keep the focus, man. And we're kind of like homeschooling the kids. My wife is doing most of the job, obviously, because she spends most of the time. I'm still working from home for LM, so I basically like I stay here like in the office for most of my day. But she is being a rock star, man. She's doing so much. She supports us so well. So yeah, very grateful for the wife.
Yeah, I have my kids all day.
Oh, you do, right? Oh man.
I work from home, so the quarantine for me has just been like, I just have the kids all day.
Yeah. Oh,
crazy.
Yeah, man. Well, we're gonna get out of this at some point. It's just like I don't know what it's gonna be the general consequence of it, but anyway, hoping for the best. So I'm gonna go a little bit higher now. So I went like to 32 and made my brushes smaller. I'm gonna keep doing the same thing. I'm still in the same color, basically, like that color that I picked in there, just as a reference, at least for me here. That's the color I'm using, like 157, 94, 70. And it's just like it's working for my character. For your character, it's gonna be definitely different. So I'm just going to this areas I need a little bit more darkness in here. And you see, like if I switch to the flat color now, you start seeing a little bit of a pattern now, right? Like things are just getting a little bit more spray brushed in there. So you have to remember that all this stuff is going to be mixed with the subsurface scattering. Like I said, it's going to level a lot of it, and the other stuff is going to be basically like the displacement map. That's going to, you know, help to actually disguise a lot of that stuff. So a lot of stuff we think like we need to be super specific, but not so much. The specific stuff is mostly like those pimples and little marks in the skin, little tags and stuff like that. But other than that, you need to have enough variation, you know, so this spray really helps with that. And I'm just going again, like in circles, another pass. So it's slightly darker this time. And we're gonna be building up all those colors very slowly. Make sure that we have something that looks natural at the end. I'm not against like the other approach I told you guys. Like if you want to go like super saturated with it at first and then bring those forms up, you know, it's like the lighter tones later to cover that up. But I mean, it's not my approach, you know, my particular approach. I rather paint the stuff I can actually see and keeping always in mind that this is going to be subsurface subsurface scattering is going to be covering the whole thing. So like a lot of stuff, like all the redness that I'm seeing, like in those wrinkles and everything, this is all subsurface scattering, you know, underneath here, the nose, all those thin areas like lips, right? It's a lot that's going to come from the scatter. So it's one thing people don't take into account. And then, like I said, if you mesh like 1-to-1 without color correcting it, then you're going to get like a super orange model when you render. And then people, what they normally do, they just bring this orange model to a Photoshop or some other app, and they just remove that by shifting the colors around, right? So you can do that as well. You can render something that looks very orangey in Maya, and they're just color corrected in your favorite post software. But what I try to do, I try to create the renders as close as possible to any reference that I'm doing inside of Maya by using color correction nodes inside of Maya. And then anything else after that is like, it's just like easy, you know, because you don't need to reinvent anything. You just, you know, get the results like pretty close to what you needed. So right now we got like those tones in place. Now it's still a little bit monotonous, so I'm gonna do a little bit stronger again. So less pass. We're gonna do like a 45 maybe, a little bit smaller. And then let's get some of those areas more specific around here. In my experience, like if you add like too much difference between those tones, you know, and if you go like with the noise too strong, for example, it ends up like looking like the skin has some kind of disease, you know. When you render stuff, it doesn't look very right. It kind of like looks noisy, you know, because it is noisy with all this stuff going on. So go slow, you know. It's like just paint the first pass. Make sure you cover the whole surface that you can actually evaluate, and then bring it to Maya, render it, and then based on that render with the neutral kind of light, the way I set up, for example, like with a kind of like neutral color and everything, then you bring it back here and start like, okay, how much more color I need in this area? Do I need to go stronger? Do I need to go less than this? You know. But I would say like don't go all the way until you paint the entire thing without testing actual renders. The same way I say, don't sculpt the whole thing, for example, the pores and everything in the whole face, just to realize that's wrong at the end, you know. Sculpt a little part, render it. If it's in a ballpark, then you can continue doing it. That's why the renders are so important, just like to keep checking things, you know. Not just the, you know, just for color, but for everything, lighting, shapes in the face, everything. You need those renders. Okay, so now let's go and let's get some more specific stuff here. So let's try to add some yellows here. And the yellows I'm talking about, they're not like literal yellows. They are basically, let me switch to this one here. They are basically very pale yellow. So if I go all the way here, it's almost like between yellow and green, kind of ochre. And I'm gonna go like up almost like to, let's see, a little bit more on the saturated side this time, but almost like towards white. So if I paint it like full on intensity, maybe this a little bit more yellow than that. Let's get more saturation in it. So around here, something like that. You know, it's like it's very, very pale, but has maybe a little bit more yellow. Let's see this one. That's too yellow now. Something between around here. So let's go back to my intensity very low again, so 5. And for this guy, I can actually increase the flow a little bit. So from 0.25 was the default. So I'm gonna bring it down to kind of like in between 0.08 or 0.10. And so I get more flow. So like this, right? Get more flow with that. So let's do a intensity of 5. And I'm gonna start adding some of that in areas of like cartilage. And so for example, like around the tip of the nose, gonna add some of that. Around here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
When you're painting, do you stay at the highest level of subdivision for the HDGO?
Yes, you need to, yeah.
Yeah, because I think otherwise it creates like compression artifacts or something like that.
Yes, it definitely does, man. And even after you have everything painted, sometimes like you're tempted to just go back to the lowest level and then paint some more in there. And it's a hit and miss because sometimes it doesn't affect, it kind of adapts and preserves what you had before. But sometimes it's like you said, like it produces these artifacts and then it messes up the whole texture. So beware, guys, if you're painting HD, try to stay at the highest level when you paint. Otherwise, you might screw things up.
Yeah, like I used to go like lower levels because I used to like using the smooth brush to smooth out RGB values.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier, but then I've kind of swayed away from that because obviously the compression issues.
Yep, it happens, man. But you see, like if I paint here, for example, like you see there's a plain area right there. Just by adding this tone that's kind of like this pale yellow, look how much it brings life to that area. Just like by doing this, it kind of like adds this almost like, you know, like when you're in the cold and you look at your cheeks in the cold and you have like those little texture like of reds and pale whites in between. That's kind of like that's why I mentioned like the pale tones is that actually going to bring everything to life, you know. This kind of tones, just like when you mix on top of the darker stuff, you definitely start getting more of this skin kind of look to it, you know. Yeah, it's extra depth to the whole thing. I'm just going around here. So in areas where I have cartilage, for example, like the nose, I'm gonna stop in there and then just add more of it. Same for ears, for example, but we don't have the ears visible. I cannot do it at this point. Let's try to do some around the eyebrows. I try to blend. I'm using my pressure sensitivity as well to actually make sure that I blend between this area and then what's around it. So it's not like a subtle stop in there. I'm gonna add some more of this around the eye here, underneath. Get a little bit more pale underneath. So it really adds this nice little look to the whole thing. Now let's try to get some more of this, the lips stuff that's still very far from what we need. So it's still very, you know, it's like pinkish around here. So every time I see something that's a little bit too much, I try to level things by clicking this one and then dragging some area that's pretty close to that, right? Something like that. And then using that color that I just sampled to just actually help with the blending. Like close enough to that color, you know, that's around that area. So same around here. So for example, like let's get this and then mix a little bit around here. Because again, like if it's too noisy, it's gonna look rusty, you know, your model is gonna look a little rusty too. And that's never a good thing. It has to have variation, but without being too crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the model already, you know, with you know, with the subsurface scattering, with the displacement maps and everything. So it has to look like subtle enough. Now the lips look very pink and weird. So let's go and switch back to our material, and then let's go to add some more color now. So let's sample this one again. So we have like a ballpark. I'm gonna go darker, a little bit more on the red side of things. Maybe a little bit more saturated. Still behind the middle line right there. A little bit more red.
Hey, Chris?
Yes?
You probably know this, but if you press C on the keyboard, it will color pick. It's like a shortcut.
Oh, I never used it. Oh, that's pretty cool. You actually just keep pressing, it just goes and picks it.
Yeah.
That's nice. I never noticed that. That's cool, man. Thank you.
Ah, no worries.
Yeah. So let's go back here. So more saturation. And a little bit more towards that. That's pretty cool, man. Another thing I learned. So now let's get maybe a little darker than that. So something like that. It's surprising, you know, it's like how much you think the color is that color you're seeing and how much of it's coming from the subsurface scattering. You know, it's like, it's very surprising. It's like I said, you remove the blood from somebody's skin, you know, it's just like, it's a very pale kind of creature right there. Obviously, if it's if it doesn't have a lot of melanin in it, right? Otherwise, it's going to be darker. But definitely not as saturated with yellow and red tones because of the no presence of blood and fat tissue underneath. And then when I get to the top lip, we're going to get a little bit darker as well. And I'm going to make sure that this darkness is going to expand a little bit beyond the lip itself. If it's too localized, it looks like lipstick, right? And that's the whole reason we are using like a very low intensity, so we can actually expand it. So it can actually go a little bit over that edge and blend with the surrounding areas. If it's a lipstick, then definitely you're gonna want to do like a little bit more precise placement in there. But in this case here, we are not dealing with that. So I'm getting a little bit darker and darker around here. And then in the middle, we're gonna try to desaturate a little bit. And also the middle in here, you see like there is a lot of, it looks like a lighter tone overall. You have to bear in mind that there's a global light going on. Like to see like in her eye, you can see the lighting right there. It's a pretty broad source of light, kind of like a higher, I don't know if it's a window or whatever it is. And then definitely that's casting like a very diffuse shadow underneath her nose. You see like it's a very kind of broad light. Everything is very diffused. And that's actually diffusing the specular in her lips as well. So a lot of that whitish tone might be from the specular itself, you know, that's just like pretty diffused in there. So we have to be careful with that as well. But again, it's the kind of stuff like the model has to look good under different lighting situations, you know, so that's why it's important to keep rendering under different lighting setups, you know, just like bring a bunch of like HDRIs from HDRI Haven, right? And then just create a bunch of them. I think like for my African guy, I had probably like 10 of them. And then basically like the same deal, just go to your Arnold. You're gonna go to Arnold and then light Sky Dome, just click and then plug like one of the HDRI maps that like we did before. And then keep doing this for another like, I don't know how many you wanna do. I did like for that past scene like 10 times. So I had like 10 maps and it would just switch between one and the other one, and see if the model was looking good across the board. If it was working okay under you know, outdoors lighting and all kinds of stuff. So let's see, analyze images. So those are tasks here, for example. Let's try. I think I have this. Let's see. So I had this guy here, right? That was just. It was like, this one's like, it's not a bus station. There's another one that's a bus station, but this one is indoors. Then this one is the bus station, kind of like where they park the buses in there. And then, not this one, where is it? This one, right? Kind of like an indoors kind of thing. This one's outdoors, definitely, just to see like how the specular behaves. And then all of them, you know, it's like just trying like a lot of different HDRI maps, you know, and seeing what works and what doesn't. So, I mean, there's no way out. I mean, like you guys gonna be doing stuff, you're gonna have to try like multiple lighting setups, you know. And then obviously a good approach to start with would be something more neutral like this, right? Just like at least, you know, even if the light's not perfect, at least the calibration is pretty good, you know. You know, like you're gonna be doing probably like between 6,500 and 7,000 Kelvin. So if you go higher than 7,000, you're probably going to start getting a little bit of a blue tint. And if you go lower than 65, you're probably going to get more towards the yellow tint, right? So kind of like 65 to 7,000 would be kind of like a ballpark. I have like my studio lighting setup. I have like some fluorescent stuff, like a constant light, so it's not like a flashlight. And I think they're calibrated to about like 6,000, so it's a little bit warmer than this, but they look pretty white in real life, you know. So I don't know. They look very, very white. They look like completely daylight at 6,000. So go figure. So now we added some more of that. So let's do some more yellows yet again, or actually more towards orange. I'm gonna go a little bit more saturated this time, and maybe a little bit higher intensity rate, 10. Still using my trusty spray in there. Just gonna do like without the symmetry this time around because I'm working right here in the middle. Just gonna add some of that, a little bit more of that tan around here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So before I used to, when I painted skin, I used to observe a lot of like scanned textures. And they do get fairly saturated. So
yep.
So the question is like, do you think it is better to let's say take something around that and like lower the saturation, or the colors that they use in scans is actually correct?
No, the thing is, there's no way they can remove the scatter from the scan, right? So you're gonna get like a matching color for whatever they did in the photo shoot, probably like a polarized, right? So basically, like you're not gonna have like any reflections or anything. But the fact is, like the subsurface scattering is still there, right? There's no way to remove that. So what I'm saying is that either you can actually paint the maps first, and then you just saturate the maps, and then you bring it back to the software you're using, right? But I think the best approach, at least the one I found to be the best for me, is to bring the maps as is. Basically, like I'm gonna try to match those two as the best I can, because that's the only reference I have, right? Either that or I scan, like you mentioned. And then once those maps are inside of Maya, I'm gonna add like a color correction node in there, and then we're gonna be rendering and comparing. Okay, until how much I have to desaturate to bring this back to this, you know, to this color. Because this is a combination of the subsurface scattering, whatever color this is going to end up being, you know, which probably is not going to be the same color. It's going to be more desaturated than this at the end.
I see. That's some good info. Thanks.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned this to one of the TDs at ILM at some point, and he was like, "Man, I didn't think about that." And then he was asking me, actually, is there any way to actually bake this color? You know, it's like at the end. And I think like with Arnold, we can actually potentially bake this, but since we were using HD in here, it's not like we can bring the maps back and re-import, you know, because if you try to import the map in here when you're inside of HD, it doesn't work, you know, it's like it doesn't see texture maps, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like you don't have UVs actually. So if you go like UV map, you see like there's nothing there. So in that case, it's not going to be useful. But for people using Mario, for example, I think you can bake out of Arnold just like that color after modification, you know. So I think it's possible.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So around here, this area, you see, like I'm starting to add like more like darker tones and everything with this yellowish. But around that area, around right here around the lips, it's almost like I need to go towards that desaturated yellow again, and bring this one up a little bit. Obviously, I don't have a lot of detail right now, so it's not going to be like disguised too much. Like it's going to be very, very pale when I bring it to Maya. But then slowly I can start blending some of the surrounding areas, and then with the detail, I can actually get this to look a little better, but definitely going to get a little paler than the rest. Try to imagine like if there is some pressure coming from within, right? Like if there's a compression, you're probably going to get like the blood to actually flow out of that area if something is compressed, right? So if you find something, for example, like in between wrinkles, if it's a very strong facial expression, you can, for example, like those pictures I show of one of my friends, right? He was doing a strong facial expression. So right around the wrinkles, they're gonna go almost like pale in between, right? There's a kind of like the, and also there is, you know, like another arguments, like if you have like some suntan, right? Like in between the wrinkles, you're probably gonna get a little bit paler overall, because it's basically like it's blocking the sun from entering full on. So let's get this a little bit more. I want to do a render actually very soon. So I want to export this so we can actually see what we have at this point before we go crazy with the rest. And then we can talk about that color correction node and see if we can plug it. Actually, I'm in doubt if I use one or the other one, because there's a way you can actually plug one that you can actually plug a curves node. You can actually do, you know, it's like desaturate one by one, like blue, red, and green, which is basically what I use for Stan Winston. But then later I actually switched to another one that's kind of like a color correction node itself that's more specific. And that one has hue, saturation, and contrast and all that stuff. So that one might work better, you know, but I'm not sure. We're going to have to try it. So at this point here, we did a first pass. And everything we're going to be doing from this point on is going to be an iteration on that, right? So there's a little bit of color in there. Still very simple map, right? There's nothing very specific when it comes like to, you know, some of those spots or anything. The spots going to come from a combination of things. For example, if I go to my skin here, if I want to do something like major, you know, like spots, for example, on the sides in here, sometimes it's very hard to achieve with the brush itself. Even if you switch to something like, let's say, the clay build up with a square. Where is the square over here? If you do that and you switch to RGB only, let's see if I do something like at 100%, it's going to be very strong here. I'm going to sample the color. I'm going to drag it down slightly. And here it's a trick, because if I click this, if I bring it down quite a lot, thinking that's going to be a little bit difference, it's going to be very different from that color. Look how different it is. So it's normally like the best approach is to actually get the color, bring it down very slightly, just a little bit, and that already shows a lot of color, you know. It's just a tiny little tweak. And then for intensity, you can bring it all the way down. So you can use this way, basically like paint with the clay build up, you know, since it has like a harsh area, like a edge, right? So you can do that. Or you can actually switch to an approach that's based on masks, right? So the masks also help you to have more control, because for those specific spots, you want to make sure that the edges have a little bit more of a sharpness to it, right? So the other approach is to actually, you know, create everything with masks. So you paint the masks. Make sure you have, for example, if you're painting your mask, let's try. Oh, intensity. Yeah, let's try that. Focal shift. So you can press like Control for the mask, and then the focal shift you can bring all the way down. So it's completely sharp, right? And that way you have like, you are absolutely sure that's the sharp line around it. So let's just undo this. And then let's paint a mask around here with a very sharp line. So we get this nice little, you know, patterns like that. Very, very sharp lines. And then if I do something like this, for example, I don't even know how many of those she has, but just as an example, then I can just reverse the mask. And then if you press Control H, it hides it. Then now I can actually switch to clay build up again. Let's pick a color in here. Again, tiny little tweak like that. And then if I paint with a bigger brush, you can start revealing them like that. Maybe like if I want to add a little bit more redness to it, just going to switch more towards red. And you get this interesting little, you know, faint detail in there. And that's basically like I think that's the best approach to create like those little freckles that are very specific in shape, you know, because every time you try to do something that's too airbrushy, it doesn't look that good. So for those guys, and even like for those little dots and pimples and things, it's better to use like an approach like that, you know, either like a clay build up with a harsh edge like that, or like the approach of the mask. I actually like the mask better. But at this point, let's do something here. Let's just export this whole thing. And it shouldn't take too long, actually. Just make sure that to prevent any problems with your poly paint, that you try not to paint anything when you're outside of HD. Try to paint just when you're HD. So first I'm going to turn off the RGB just to make sure I'm not making any accidents in here. But for the most part, I mean, like I did work like back and forth and it didn't cause the trouble. But to be fair, like a few times actually I noticed that problem, that it actually affected the HD levels. So just to prevent it, you know. So I didn't change any of the forms for her. So I don't need to export any displacement maps. It's just going to be colored. That's going to be really fast. So just going to name this one albedo. And then let's see, 12, which is my iteration at this point. And then for the plugin, multi-map exporter. Actually, before I do this, guys, I didn't save anything. Let me save it. Talking about save, man, today I did this pass that was like, you know, when you do like 1 hour of solid work and it feels like you did like the, you know, 5 hours of work straight, and you think that everything is in the spot that it was supposed to be. And it was like, then it kind of crashes. So that's what happened today. Today I was playing with some brush presets, and then I went to brush, and then I clicked this modifier here. I'm not going to do it now, but elasticity, and I cranked everything up, right? I cranked everything up to see what happened. And I was in HD mode. I was at the lowest level, only like 500,000 polys. And I touched the model after I changed that, and the computer completely went like, start like spinning. And I was like, please don't crash, please don't crash. I didn't have it saved. I had to wait about like 35 minutes for it to unlock, but it was like spinning, and I was like desperate. Man, I cannot lose those changes because those ones made sense, you know? But yeah, but it came back, and as soon as it came back, I saved it straight away, and then I did undo it, and everything worked out. I was like, Jesus, so good. So displacement, I'm gonna turn off. I'm gonna make sure I'm actually gonna put my RGB at 100 just because I'm superstitious about it since I'm exporting the color maps. But I don't think you need it actually. Texture from Polypaint, I don't need to switch morph target, and I'm gonna keep my 8K. So let's export those. I don't even need to go to the lowest level. Just like from here is fine. If it's color map is much more flexible for that kind of stuff. You can export from anywhere. Let's go here. So let's see how long it's gonna take. That's one map. And this is exporting all the way from HD. So you see there's no difference between exporting HD, non-HD, Polypaint. It's the same thing. If you paint it inside of HD, when you export them, ZBrush is gonna make sure that goes HD before it exports anything, you know. It recognizes if there's HD information, it's gonna export. So all you need to do is to run the multi-map exporter, and that's it. So I think this is this the last one or the one before? Let's see. And this is going to be our very first pass, so I don't expect too much, but at least we're going to see some color, which is good. Okay, 1 minute, not too bad. All right, let's plug this, guys. Here, so we have this one as our test bench. Let's put this lady over there. Let's switch to my camera that actually has the same angle. And it's going to be the first frame, so that frame. And I still have a very, very generic specular in there, right? We have the map plug, but you see like there is no balance. I need to go more specky here and lips and less here and a little bit less here. Here's kind of okay actually, but so let's plug those maps. So let's get to the model itself. And it's gonna go to the subsurface color here. And then, so the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna plug straight away here, just so you can see that, you know, we can save a render, just so you can see how it looks like. So we're gonna go to File. And another thing that we're gonna have to do here, we're gonna have to test if it's gonna be sRGB or if it's gonna be the REC 709, which is basically the calibration for the color I started from. So let's see what we can do here. Let's see if Arnold, no texture, so off, blah, blah, blah. Let's get the image, albedo, right there. And then I'm gonna click my UV tile. Don't forget the UV tile, UDIM. And let's start with just texture first, and let's see what happens. So,
hey, Chris.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but mine usually doesn't accept the Mari UDIM. It always accepts the ZBrush one. Do you know why?
It doesn't accept the Mari one?
Yeah, like in Maya, when you set up your tiles.
Yeah.
It doesn't accept the Mari. I have to change it to ZBrush, and then it actually works.
Oh, check this out. I think you have your settings wrong. So check this out. If you go to your Z plugin, under the multi-map exporter, if you click File Names, you have to switch this to UDIM right here.
Oh, yes. I forgot to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, because you're probably exporting as a ZBrush right now, like this.
Right.
Either this one or this one. And that's the default, actually. But yeah, make sure you have that one. Otherwise, yeah, we're going to have to switch to a different format.
Thanks.
No problem. So let's see. I'm going to switch my resolution to... Actually, going to keep at 1200 right now because we need to compare apples to apples in there. Just that it's taking a little long to render. I'm going to keep it like at maybe like camera at 6 for the anti-alias. And let's render this one. This one is saved. So let's try this here. She has color now, yes. Or a little bit of it. Let's isolate this maybe around here. Yeah, the resolution is a little high at 1200 by 1200. I normally render 900, but I was doing those tests and I wanted to see things a little bit, you know, with more detail.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So, why did you plug the color map into like the subsurface color instead of the, I don't know, like the surface color, like the base color?
Check this out. Like the way that this works is that if you use like you're talking about the base, the diffuse in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what you do with the diffuse. If you have this subsurface weight all the way to 1, it basically completely bypasses anything that's in here, right? So the spot that you have to plug things is basically like you can either use the radius, which is the color of the subsurface scattering, or the subsurface color itself. And this is basically where you're going to plug your map.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So another thing that some people do is that sometimes they don't want to go full subsurface scattering for the skin, and so they like to use a little bit of a mix between the roughness and the subsurface scattering. In that case, if you go like any number below 1 in here, so for example, if you had like 0.8 in here, that means that you would get like 80% of subsurface scattering from this channel mixed with 20% from this channel. And that mix is good, for example, of surfaces like rubber. Rubber is part subsurface, but part like diffuse as well. So it works great. But for the skin, I actually like to use pure subsurface scattering, you know. So that's why I plug it here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So you see, like just like I predicted, she's much more like orange, right, and dark than it should be based on the reference that we are using, because we are dealing with the subsurface scattering, right? Like things are mixing in there. So we get like the redness from the subsurface scattering plus the redness from the color itself. So what we're gonna try to do, let's save this one. Store snapshot just for this area. So now you see like I plugged straight to subsurface color, right? So let's do some voodoo here. So let's just go to this guy, to our hypershade, and then let's make sure that I stop my render. Otherwise, yeah, I didn't stop it. See, otherwise, gonna keep going in there, making things slow. But I saved it before, so we're good. So let's select the model itself. It's so hard for me to work in 1080p to be able to stream to you guys, because I'm used to work like with a much bigger monitor. My second monitor is actually a 4K in here, so I can put all those menus around, but just like 1080p became so small for like nowadays, right? Like standards. And on the side I have like I actually got a TV years ago, you know, it's like a 42 inches, I think. And that's the one I use for the other computer in there. It's pretty cool because you can actually put everything around and it works great. It's a Samsung. It's great for that. So let's see, old lady skin. I'm gonna press graph input and output just to organize things here. So that's all I have plugged in there. So let's see how this thing works here. Still kind of slow. I wonder if did I press this stop? Yeah. Okay. Just double checking. So right now you're gonna see like I have my albedo plugged right here in the subsurface color, right? But if you look at the shader utility is under Arnold, so Arnold utility. So we're gonna find a couple of different stuff here. For example, like the one I used to work before was from Maya. So like this, basically like all the shaders from Maya, those nodes are translated to Arnold, or at least like I guess the vast majority of the work just fine. It translates between the two, renders. So we don't need to worry about like adding like an actual Arnold shader, because he actually understands those Maya ones and just converts on the fly. But the one I used to work with was this one here. Let's see if I remember the name of it actually. Remap color, right? So the remap color looks like this. So the map color from Maya has those nodes. So we have a curve for red, green, and blue, right? So you basically like you plug your map in here to the color, and then the output of this one goes into your subsurface scattering. And then you can play with, for example, like desaturating things. So I would normally approach this way. I would bring maintain the middle section in here, but then desaturate. So for example, like bring the top value in here down. So like the red would get like just partially what I have in here. I would desaturate the red more, and then the green keep in the same spot, and then bring the blue up. Basically, that's what I would do. But in this case here, we're gonna do maybe using a different node. We can try with both and see which one we can get more control. So this is a utility you can find under Maya's shaders, right? But then if you go into your shader here for Arnold, now we're gonna have a different one. Let me see, a shader, no, actually utility as well. So this one's gonna be a color correction. Let's see if that's the name he has in there. Color correct, this one. So AI color correct. So if you click that one, so the attributes are different now. So this one was like red, green, and blue, basically. But this one here, you have gamma, hue, shift, saturation, contrast, pivot, exposure, all this stuff, right? So we're gonna try it with that one. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna just select this little line here, the output color, or I can just click and drag too, but sometimes you just like delete it, and then you can just do like a brand new one. So out color from this one is gonna go to the input of this one, right? So now it's plugged in there. And now the out color of this node is gonna go into your subsurface color, not the radius, right? So now let's reorganize this. Click the top node, graph input and output. So now we have that pretty clear in there. So basically like the albedo goes into the input of the AI color correct. And from the output, it goes to the subsurface color. So now this is how we're gonna control this. Let's try, see like if I click this node, the map is plugged right there, right? So let's try to play with those slides in here and see if we can get some adjustments kind of like on the fly in there. So let's see. I already have it selected, so I can just like use this one here. If you want to make sure this is always visible, you can always click like a copy tab. And then this is basically like, you can close anything at this point, you always have the tab in there. So let's get back to this guy. And then again, if I render, it's gonna be exactly the way we got it before, which is this, right? The final result after it resolves should look like this. Let's just make sure that everything looks the same first. Maybe the area I'm using is a little bigger. A little too big, sorry. Yeah, it seems like it's gonna be exactly the same after resolves. So that's good. So let's stop it. Actually, let's continue it. And then let's get like a smaller area maybe just for us to tweak. Let's get around the lips in here and nose so we can get a little bit of both. Oops. That should be a little faster. And then let's get to, let's try a couple of things here. For example, it's kind of like it's gonna have to be a couple of tests in here, right? Like we're gonna try to reduce the saturation first. So if I go all the way down, look what's happening here. So it's gonna get like much more pale, right, overall. So let's try to get maybe like 0.7, 0.8 maybe. Let's try with that first. And then for my gamma shift, let's see, maybe I can try to get a little bit more towards, let's see if this is more yellow. No, this one's more yellow. Okay, so let's go towards tiny little bit of yellow here, a little bit more warmth to it. So let's try 0.1 and then 0.08 in there. So let's see. Once it resolves, here it's going to look different. So we have to wait until it renders. So let's see that.
When I first saw the render, I thought you were going full Yoda.
Right? So like that's the difference right here. So basically like we were trying to compensate for the subsurface scattering, right? That's too strong before. So kind of like bring it back to a little bit more neutral. But obviously I have to keep looking at this reference that we have if we're gonna try to create something like that. And then basically I'm gonna have to be going back and forth. Obviously the lighting in here is very tricky, right? Because you never know, for example, how warm the light is in here, what's in the environment in here, what's reflecting to her face. You know, it's like there's a lot of pollution, right? Like in terms of colors on her face. It's hard to tell what's the exact tone of her skin. What I can tell you guys is that based on this one here, let's see, let's get my references back. So for example, like this is someone from her place, right? Like someone from the same from the same you know, community. So the skin looks it's under the sun in here. It looks kind of like very warm in a way. I hate that. Very warm in a way. Now, if I look at this other reference of her, this one here, she looks more like this, right? Which is kind of like, you know, it looks a little bit more red, but because there's a lot of scattering here and the lighting is different too, it's pretty much like sunlight hitting her straight away. So you're getting like this very sharp shadow in there and everything. So it's a different kind of lighting. And then you have this one here, and you have to understand that all those pictures are probably processed, because people, when they take those pictures, they normally like process them to look nice in the websites, right? So they gotta crank the contrast, crank a lot of stuff, and you never know exactly what's going on. But so this one here, look how much darker she looks in there, right, as well. So in relation to the previous one we had right there, right? So it's like, it's hard to tell what's going on. That's why we're gonna have to find like, you know, our artistic eye in there and judge what looks better, you know? It's like, am I gonna go for something more like this, right? Or in this case here is a much more, you know, broad light that's actually lighting the whole thing, but she is much warmer as well. Maybe this one is a little bit cooler, right? Like lighting. You can tell like the color of the specular itself that looks a little bit more cool overall. So, you know, it's kind of like you're going to have to judge this as we go and then try to find what's the sweet spot, you know. Now, just by changing, sorry, someone is about to say something. I heard some noises in there. So basically, like, this is the principle of what I'm trying to say, you know, it's like, is that if you just reproduce the color you see in a picture, in a photograph, and you just assign it to your channel here in Maya and try to render, you're definitely going to get more saturation. And then, like I said, the option is to actually remove the saturation in post, like a lot of people do. You know, see renders, like raw renders looking very orange, and then they color correct, and then to look correct, it looks great. Or you can try to do this right here inside of Maya, you know. And then you're going to have to do kind of like a back and forth between what's needed in terms of saturation. And it's tricky, right? Like, I mean, like I'm shifting a little bit towards yellow in here, but maybe I should be doing this inside of ZBrush instead, right? And the same thing here with the saturation, you know, it's like if I go much more saturated, right, then you get like that kind of tone. Maybe the contrast I'm gonna have, maybe I can keep the saturation and maybe like increase the contrast or reduce the contrast, you know. It's gonna be like a back and forth and trying to find a sweet spot where the skin looks correct, you know. But here, for example, like just reducing the saturation, like goes towards gray, right, and then a little bit more towards you know, yellow. So I'm gonna try maybe like 0.9 around here, and then the contrast I reduced a little bit as well, so 0.9, or maybe I can increase it a little bit. I don't know. I'm gonna have to find out just by comparing those pictures, and then also trying to find that sweet spot, because like I said, I mean, you know, it's like they're very different, right? Like you see the same lady under different lighting situations, and the skin is different, and you never know what they did to manipulate the picture. So let's just render like a full on with the whole thing here. Let's see if it's just too red now, which looks like red, but you never know when it resolves in there. Let's try to shift this one a tiny bit towards yellow, and then bring the contrast back to, let's try that. So this is basically how we're gonna spend most of your time. You know, it's like sculpting, it takes some time, obviously, but most of the time is poking around shaders and trying to get the right look at the end. And that consumes a ton of time. You know, it's like that's why it's important to have like a okay fast machine to be able to see what you're doing, you know. And that's why my dream is to have those GTX, no, RTX graphics cards, you know, it's like running in you know, GPU. That would be perfect actually, because that's the kind of stuff that really takes the time, you know. You see, like, just like some of the values in here kind of like gave me a interesting ballpark in there. Definitely much better than this one. And but definitely going to be able to, if I get something that's close enough, then I'm going to just be pushing one step forward at a time in ZBrush just by painting the colors in there. So if I go here, let's see. Yeah, I mean, like this is just one lighting situation, right? Maybe I should bring like a bunch of different ones tonight. Probably going to do that. And then start experimenting with it. Let's do this now. Actually, we can try some tests because I think that's what we're going to be doing for most of the tonight. And then tomorrow we can talk about the other maps. You know, it's like I kind of brushed around the other maps, but I didn't specifically talk about how to paint them. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. But today, let's do some of those tests. Let's finish this little render here just for a case of comparison. And then let's bring some of the maps in here, the environments, so we can actually test her. Basically, going to be bringing the same maps that I use for to render my African warrior. So let's try this. Yeah, I see like there's a huge difference already, and this plays a huge part about like on the realism. It's like the level of realism we can get with your models. It's like it's nailing the color of the albedo. It's like so important. If it's a little bit off, it doesn't sell it. So yeah, this is definitely gonna be the time I'm gonna spend it the most. Even like when I was using just the plain color like this, look how subsurfacey this whole thing was, right? I didn't change the amount of subsurface, right? Like the radius is still the same, but if you compare this to this, right? Now it's because of the color is so much closer to that. It almost like, you see like it reduced the specular quite a lot, the subsurface quite a lot. So that's the thing, it's like you think it's too specular because you're looking at the silicon model here, right? It's all silicon. As soon as you start adding some actual color in there, then you start getting a little bit more natural, right? So that's gonna be interesting to look. See the lips around here, right? It's missing a lot of specular. This whole area here in the actual lady is very specky. So I'm gonna be tweaking this map tonight and kind of like leveling it. And actually it's two maps I have to tweak based on what I told you guys before, which is gonna be basically like the bump height that's gonna be controlling how the bump is breaking up the surface and make everything more diffuse or rough. And also the specular map itself, the amount of specular. I'm gonna have to make sure I hit that T-zone, like nose, mouth, chin, and then the forehead, right? And then here it's a hit and miss. I mean, like the type of skin for this old lady is not correct. I'm gonna have to basically eliminate a lot of those pores from here. Just keep them around here and here, and nose. But here definitely gonna go much smoother than that. And that's gonna affect how the skin is gonna reflect as well. So you're gonna have to pay attention to that. So at this point here is almost like she could use a little bit more scatter at this point. It's like just because this color actually brought everything down so much, and the fact that I was using, let's just double check. So let's just cancel right here. We don't need to see more than that. Let's just save it, store a snapshot. So the fact that I was judging everything by looking at her without any texture before, like this. So I think I tweaked the amount of subsurface scattering to the scale to 110. But like I said before, I normally use like 125 or 135 sometimes, and that gives me a nicer result, more natural, right? So I might have to do that, if I start feeling like she looks a little dry overall, For example, like I could use a little bit more scatter around here that I'm not seeing that much, right? And even here, it got like much lower than it was before. So I definitely can crank that spec a little bit, the subsurface a little bit more. Let's do a little quick test since we're just testing things here today. Let's do from this, where is it? Subsurface. So from 110, let's try and see what happens with let's try 130. If it's too big, then we come back, but let's just isolate let's try with the nose first. Nose and lips, maybe a little bit, like that. And then we're gonna go to the eyes. So right here, it's gonna be subtle, but you can tell right in this little line in here, it's already more scattery, right? So let's see with the eye what's happening there. So I would say, yeah, between 110 and 150. It can be anywhere in there. It's going to be depending on the size of your model. I mean, like the scale of the head is going to change, you know, from person to person. And this might have gone a little bit too far, I guess. Let's see. No, actually, after the resolves is not too bad. So let's see between this one and that one, right? That's the difference between the two of them. It's very, very minor once you have the textures in place. That's basically before and after. So this is before, this is after, a little bit more. So something in between that, you know, it's like it might be a little bit too much, but you know, if I reduce a tiny little bit, it might work just fine. But you know, I went from 110 to 130, so maybe the sweet spot would be 125 or 120, you know, but something to think about. So let's bring those maps here. Let's get this lady. Here she is. Let's just save her. Save scene as 8. And then let's bring let's just open the scene file with my African guy, and then we're gonna go to actually steal some of his stuff, steal his coins. That's what I do with my kids. I got my kid, he's like 6 years old. I get him by his feet, just like shake him. Give me all your coins, give me all your coins. He laughs his ass off. Asian tribal ladies, African tribes. Okay, so let's see. Color corrected. Which one is that now? I think, I hope every single one of them have all the lights, because at some point I had 10 of them. Let's see if one of those has it. I want to steal his stuff, man. Today was a happy day with no crashes, man. Other than that scare that I had before the class started, but not during the class. So far we did a good job. It sucks when it crashes all the time. So this is one of those environments, right? Like that. I can actually give you like the names of them. Those maps, all of them come from the same place, from the HDRI Haven. And I can give you like, let's see. I don't know why, like if you guys know like why Maya creates like this double outliner. I know there is a function for it, but one of them goes dead from time to time. It doesn't react. So for example, like you click stuff and you can tell it's selecting, but doesn't highlight things, you know? Sometimes it goes completely wacky, and I don't know why they have 2 of them. It's weird. So yeah, I have a bunch in here. So let's see, I named them based on the names of the file. So based like this one here has this weird name, K Loof Fendel, what? Partly cloudy. And then I have this Leaden Hall, and then Nature Lab. Nature Lab is actually from HDRI Labs. It's the only one that's not part of this, but I'm not using this one, by the way. Let me see if it's actually correct. Yeah, that's the Nature Lab. So this one is from IBL. What's the name of that website? HDRI Labs, IBL something archive. This one has this Nature Lab in there. It's a pretty cool one, but I'm not using it that much, to tell you the truth. So I'm just gonna hide it. I'm trying to hide it, but it's not hiding. Oh, I know what's happening here. Like around some area here, I actually did an animation. So actually I'm animating which ones are actually showing up and disappearing. Know what I mean? Well, let's see. So I could render like that sequence of lots of different maps showing up and disappearing. So let's see, for example, if I click this one. So this one is the Epping Forest, whatever you call that. So Stream 4K, Old Bus Depot, that's one of my favorite ones. Graffiti Shelter is pretty cool. The Machine Shop is really cool too. So this one has, it's like, looks like this. It's kind of like the light comes from everywhere though. It's a little high, so you get some shadows, but it's a little bit, it's a lot of light, you know, this one. Let's see the other ones, for example, Stream 4K. This one is the outdoors one that I use for him outdoors. It's really cool. The Old Buzz is definitely like one of my favorites. It's this one. It's cool because it has this highlights from the top like that, and it's like across the board. But you also have an area you can actually hide the light right around here and then around here. So basically like you can get some shadowing there and then get the light to come from the opposite direction. And then Graffiti Shelter looks cool too. Interesting that's not there. Yeah, it looks like this. So this one I use for, let me show you. Oh, my allergies are killing me today. So the Graffiti Shelter is basically those renders here. Obviously with some post-processing, right? To create the high, the lens flare there and all this stuff. But this is the Graffiti Shelter. So you can get some interesting. And this one is that, it's one of the outdoors ones. It's probably the stream one, I think. I think that's the one. It's just like a little bit more, how you say, like less saturated or exposed. I'm sorry, I kind of underexposed it a little bit. But and then let's see, Machine Shop. I show you guys this one. And then I have this Winter Sky. That looks kind of like. Oh yeah, I think that's not it. I think this is another outdoors that I used, but I don't think this is the one. I think the one I used in there is the one I just pointed you guys to. And then let's see, this one is pretty cool too. Whipple Creek. And then for the settings, I changed certain things. I mean, like most of them, I try to keep neutral, so intensity at 1. But here in the exposure, it all depends. So for example, this one here, in the color balance, instead of 1, I'm using 1.5, because this was kind of like, it's a dark map, you know. Sometimes you get some maps that are very dark. So this one here, for example, let's see the ones that the Graffiti Shelter. So I have intensity 1, and then for intensity here is actually, I reduce it. So instead of like using 1, I made it a little darker because it was a little bit overexposed. So yeah, it's the kind of stuff sometimes you have to do, you know, with those HDRI maps. Obviously, if you want to do kind of something constant, you know, that then you're probably going to use like 1 or something, but then you probably would have to block a couple of things, you know. But you see this one here, for example, I'm not doing any tweaks in it. It's just like plain the way it comes from HDRI Haven. And that's one of my favorites, you know, it looks really nice. Just make sure that when you plug those maps, you're using, if you're using the ACES, you know, color profile, that you use the utility linear sRGB in here. In the past, I was using raw. That was wrong. It was not producing the correct results. So just make sure you have linear sRGB for it. And then the other ones here, basically like Machine Shop, this one, Winter, and then Woods. This is pretty cool. Looks like this. Right in the middle of the woods, so you're gonna get very diffuse light with lots of cool highlights. Misty Pines. This one is a little bit more like a cool kind of light, right? If it's misty, you're gonna get like, I don't know, like 8,000 Kelvin or something, you know, it's gonna be bluish light. Nature Lab, this one here, so this one is street with school. It has lots of interesting reflections. Just like a couple of them, you know, that you can use. Those are the ones I tested, that those renders with my guy. So I'm just gonna copy those guys, gonna click, except for the Nature Lab, I don't need that. I'm gonna click just the ones here, and then Stream 4K. So those guys, and I'm gonna steal this light here that I'm using for him, because this one uses the grid in front of it, right? Let me steal that as well. Let's see if it's getting everything, because the plane, when you try to copy you have to make sure you get the light in the plane itself because they're connected. And then let's try those. So,
Chris?
yes.
What's the utility of the grid?
Oh, the grid, it works just like in real life, you know. It's like it basically like makes the light rays more directional. So basically like it depends of the depth of the grid, you know. So for example, if you have a grid in a area light in the studio, what it does, it basically like it makes everything, the lights go more parallel to each other, the rays go more parallel to each other. And it all depends of how deep it is. Because if it's very shallow, the light's still gonna go, for example, like imagine like if you have like a certain angle behind a box, right? If the box is very shallow, the corner of this of the light is still going to project from all directions. It's going to pass through it a lot. But if it's kind of like a deep box that you're projecting from, it's going to block, like those walls going to block it. You're going to force the light to spill forward, basically. So we are forcing the light to spill forward in here. That's basically the utility. And the cool thing is that it creates this nice reflection with a grid, kind of like a honeycomb kind of effect, which is really cool for this kind of stuff here. If you look at, for example, macro photos of eyes, something like that. So if you look at those photos of eyes, like for example, this one here, you can see that someone was using the grid in here, right? And it's cool because like the reason why they use for this type of picture in here is definitely to get more of this directional light to be able to reveal more of the detail, right? Instead of like getting everything like very diffuse, and then you know, everything gets a little merged together, like all the forms. This one separates the forms, you know. So that's the reason they use it. And also the reflection is really cool. That's the grid that you see in there. Basically, like all of those, you see like there's this, and I think the pattern is different. It's kind of like a honeycomb kind of thing, but it's easy to just model one if you want, you know, to just create something similar.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Just a follow-up question on the previous one.
Uh-huh.
So the reason to use the grid, just like real life, is it because you want like parallel but not so perfect parallel, like a directional light that you can have in Maya?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like in Maya, there is one thing we can do, which is actually use the light. There is a control that simulates that. I mean, like you can control how open it is. For example, not this one here, because this is like a mesh light, right? But if I create a brand new one, for example, light, area light, the area light itself should have, so right there. So this is the area light here. The area light itself should have a control, which is the spread right here. So this one actually simulates that. So basically, like if you bring it down, the spread goes more and more parallel, you know, so it's kind of like goes more like forward. But then you don't get that nice little pattern, you know, it's like the grid kind of pattern. And I like the fact that when you get that, you get some interesting reflections in the object, you know. So I decided to just like, let's go full on and try to simulate like what happens in real life, you know. But in terms of the effect, yeah, you can try to simulate that with just like the spread amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. It's everything like at some point when you get to start like doing your renders and looking at stuff and then comparing to some pictures and references and stuff, everything is in the freaking details, man. It's like everything. And then you start trying different things, you know. It's like, oh, what if I incorporated maybe a grid in here and see what happens, you know? And I did this like a couple of years ago. I built this little rig with the grid and everything, and I tested like with just some spheres in an environment, just like a couple of walls, 2 spheres, and then some of those soft boxes with those grids. And I made some of them deeper and some of them shallower. So this one is fairly deep, and the results are very different. It's like the light spreads in a different rate, you know. But I just like the way that the things reflect, you know. It's like it creates this nice little crisp reflection. I like it. But it might be overkill, I guess. But I like the subtle stuff that adds, you know, to it. So let's see. So I got a bunch in here selected. Let's just export them, and then get to do some testing here. So export selection. I'm gonna do my binary. and that's it, export. Let's do a scene. Let's see, dome lights. Something like that. And then let's open the old lady. Oops, not this one. Oh, did it export inside of him or her? Let's see. Travel lady, open scenes. Oh yeah, it's here, it's good, okay. I'm old, but not that old. And I'm drinking alcohol, man. The first time ever teaching the classes, I'm drinking some Moscow Mule here. It's you know, it's the only thing I actually tolerate is vodka. Wine gives me like a bad headache and puts me to sleep in 2 seconds, but vodka is pretty good, very clean. But I'm not a drinker, man. Very rarely. Today I was feeling like it.
Quarantine.
Yeah, quarantine, man. That's right. That's right. It's my excuse. Don't feel. Yeah, I'm not being a professional. I'm in quarantine, man. All right, let's go here. I have to do this more often, I guess. Everything is going smooth today. So dome lights. Oh yeah, the namespaces is something that it can be very messy sometimes. You select namespaces as parent and add a new space as string. So basically, like if you do this one, let's see if it's going to eliminate all those names that come within the scene. But if it doesn't, I can show you guys how to change it. No, it still came with everything. So see, like when you have like this type of stuff you bring from another scene and you get like this prefix everywhere, there is an editor actually, Maya. If you go to Windows and you go to, it's actually good that it went wrong in there because I can show you how to fix it. So if you go to your general editors, you're gonna see there is one here that's called namespace editor, right? So this one here has all the crap that came from the other scene. Like was already baked in there. You know, it's like it had stuff from other models. So just look at the those names in here. They're gonna change. So for example, if I go to dome lights, let's see. Let's get this one. I'm gonna just do like a delete and then merge with root. You can do this for all those guys. I don't think it accepts like doing multiple at the same time. No. Let's see if the, yeah, you have to do like one by one, I guess. Let's try this one. Merge with the root. And you're gonna see when I get to dome lights, this one here, see is gonna change here. Merge with the root. So now I have all the original names back. But I'm gonna clean up since I'm here. Just make sure I don't have any prefixes. I just wish like there was a way to actually do it. And then basically like now it's clean. So like all my objects in here have like their natural names now. So let's see what I have for those lights at this point. I have like an animation going for all of them. And maybe I don't want that. So let's just eliminate that animation. Let's just go right here. And then I have this, let's see, I have everything selected. Oh, not this one. Ready to go. Oh, my outliner. Okay. Stream all of those guys. So I can go and I was supposed to be able to, let's see if I just do from here. Let's see, hide, what's that? Break connections, okay. So break connections. So now I removed all the animation from those guys. And hopefully I didn't break anything else. So now they don't have animation anymore. So I'm just gonna hide those, gonna keep just maybe this one here visible. Did I forget to bring this one? I think I forgot to get the grid, but that's not a problem. I can do this later. But I can show you just let's render one of them, which is gonna be just without this stuff. Let's just try one render with the HDRI and see what we get. let's make sure that everything is connected here first if I didn't lose anything. So color, blah, blah, blah. Exposure at 0, cool. So let's try a little render.
Excuse me, Chris.
Yes.
Is there a reason that you would keep getting longer renders and having to keep like exporting everything as an MB and to get shorter renders?
That's a good question. I mean, like from time to time, Maya corrupts the stuff, but it's not common to have it corrupting all the time. So I'm not sure. Oh, look at that.
It feels like every time that I
think I have other lights in here.
Even more like it seems like every time that I export or I import a new model into to the blend shape, that it like seems to like, I don't know, like gain more render time.
Really? Well, that's weird, man. I mean, like naturally, when you start like plugging more and more maps to your model, it's definitely going to increase the render times. But yeah, it's weird. Like if it's corrupted, I'm just seeing here that my scene is not changing, although I don't think I have other lights. I don't know if I have this whole thing overexposed somehow in here, which you shouldn't. Let's see how I have this map plugged in here. Let's see, is that, because I'm not tweaking anything. Yeah, it's like linear sRGB, and I'm still getting like overexposure. That's weird. Maybe the connection actually got broken somehow. I'm gonna have to re-import this later, but let's try to do, I wanna try to fix this because I wanna see it. So let's try to just copy the path this way here. And then let me delete this one. I'm gonna recreate it. Arnold, let's see if that creates the same effect or it's gonna be different. If it's the same effect, then it's something that got overexposed somehow, but let's try this. This guy, and then this guy. sRGB, that looks correct now. And then let's try this lady. I think it's gonna look better now, to tell you the truth. Yeah, not as overexposed. Yeah, something got broken when I exported in there, but anyway, so that should be a, yeah, once I have those maps in here, that's gonna be easy to just test things, you know. Now, again, like this map here has some warmth to it, right? As you can tell, there's some, the light itself is pretty cool from outside, but there's a lot of warm stuff like in the environment itself. And so I don't know like how to trust, right? Like we're gonna have to use our best judgment to try to figure it out what's the skin tone, you know, because it's a mystery, right? Like we don't have access to you know, the actual color of the skin, you know, based on all those factors I mentioned. Also cameras, right? Like I was mentioning before, if you're working for the industry, sometimes you get like a reference that's basically like someone who died many, many years ago, right? And then, for example, like you have like some footage from a movie that the person was part of, but because that was not prepared to generate like a digital double, so we don't have records of, you know, it was like what's the exact same camera lens that they are using for this specific shot, you know. And then everything becomes like a guess game, you know, it's like a guessing game. So our job as artists here is to basically like work as detectives, right? We have to cross-reference a lot of stuff. We have to render under different lighting situations, you know, and try to figure out what's the color of the skin until you find something that you're happy with. But definitely not a formula, you know. It's like we don't have access to the camera lens that these people, you know, it's like if you find someone on the internet, you know, was used for that or whatever it is, you know, it's like it's just trying to observe and try to capture that the best you can. So unfortunately, that's the deal. But I think, you know, it's like just with those pointers about what tools to use, it's basically like you're going to have to trust your eye, you know, it's like from that point on, basically like, okay, here are the tools. This is how you can color correct your textures and stuff. And here's how to plug those maps. But then a lot of stuff is going to be like really your best judgment, you know. Now, one thing that happens is that sometimes, it's like I like using just the studio lighting like this because I get like a lot of detail, right? This is like a low resolution render, but you get a lot of detail if you have just like a few area lights. And if you have a HDRI map that's just like very, very broad in scope, like, it's like very global, then all that detail is going to be kind of killed in a way. So the best of both worlds for me is to use an HDRI map and then a few area lights as well. So the area lights to be able to capture all the details you want in the way you want. So for example, you can either use the one with the grid, right, and point and get like, okay, I want this direction, I want more shadow in that side. And then you get all of that. And then you plug in the HDRI light, either with an object to block that side, or for example, like with a lower intensity. So you get some of the reflections, not full on, but some of the reflections, and then get more, a lot of the other stuff coming from the area light itself, So it's a combination of both we're gonna be using. So in this case here, this is a test just with an HDRI map itself, just to see how things are. But then I'm probably gonna switch more towards, it's like a combo between like an area light and probably with the grid and then HDRI. But the cool thing is in here is that you can start like to see like what's the difference, right? Like between, it's like if you look at an area like that, the eye here, between like a light is set up like this and then an HDRI, you start seeing a little bit more of the silicon kind of feel to it, because it's getting like the subsurface from everywhere, right? Like because it's a very global light. And here you get a lot less of that effect, right? Because not very directional this way. So it's kind of cool to just look around, It's like, for example, the lips, now that I color corrected the whole thing to look a little bit more yellow overall, maybe the lips, could go a little bit more towards magenta to just bring that color up. Around the eyes in here, I think that little tint that I added to here was very, very subtle, kind of like purplish magenta. It actually helped in there, right? So yeah, gonna have to keep tweaking, but I'm definitely getting a lot of this green in here, and I'm gonna have to figure out why it's doing that. Like my previous model wasn't doing that a lot, and I'm using a very similar setting, so I'm gonna have to bug track why it's getting so green, because the depth looks pretty good, Just don't know why it's doing that. Even here, like, it looks pretty green in there. Yeah.
I've had it when it's green when the thickness is like really, really thin. But I guess that wouldn't make sense for under the eyes when it's green. Because I've had it happen within the ears.
Yeah.
So out, but
right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might be. I mean, like might be because I don't know. Like this area here is not thin. I'm still getting some greens in there, so I'm gonna have to see. Yeah, if you guys can find any information, just let us know as well. But I'm gonna have to do a little research, because back in the day, with this kind of plagued my V-Ray scenes for the longest time in the past. But with Arnold, I mean, I normally don't remember seeing that much green. It's like, the beginning of this shader, I was seeing a lot of it, and I tweaked it, and it kind of went away. But now it's kind of like back in here, so I don't know. I'm gonna have to see what's going on. It's right there, look, right in between those wrinkles, screen as well. I'm gonna have to play with the scale, do something about it. But yeah, well, at least I'm gonna see. I can see my lady with some color today, so I'm happy for that. And then in terms of painting the details, I'm gonna be probably like adding more color itself with the spray, generic stuff today. And then tomorrow we can actually cover some of the more specific little dots and things, and then the other textures as well, like the specular stuff especially. And then tonight I'm probably gonna just tweak my specular map just to get more speck around here and here, and then less here and more maybe around here. And yeah, I think we're good for today, but we still have plenty of work to do. I mean, like we have like 2 weeks to go, so we're kind of like halfway now. So plenty of work ahead of us. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I hope you guys are enjoying so far. I am. I actually got a little bit more pumped today, seeing like her with the textures. I think I can kind of start seeing the character now, which is cool. You know, it's always good to discover the characters in there. Very nice. I talk to you guys later.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good one. Stay safe.
You too.